If you're watching this video, you probably want to rid yourself of desire or at least break your attachment to them. And you've probably already tried various techniques like watching the thought or trying to non-identify with the ego. But you realize that these techniques don't really work, at least not permanently. So, why is it so hard to overcome desires? Why are we so attached to worldly things? And why aren't the techniques out there able to rid us of our suffering? And what can you actually do about it? That's what I'm going to cover in this video. I'm Tim, and I've studied Eastern teachings for the past 15 years. I've been super interested in the concept of non-attachment and the root of suffering, which is desire in Buddhism. But when I learned about spiritual science, it changed everything for me. I was able to organize all these separate pieces of information into a cohesive system, and I want to share some of that with you today. So I'm going to be going over desire from the perspective of spiritual science and anthroposophy. All right, let's get into it. Why is it so hard to overcome desire? In order to overcome desire, we must first understand the source of desire. And the source of desire lies in one concept that you've probably heard of before. But this one concept has been so widely used that there are 1,000 different conceptions and misconceptions of it. This one concept is the astral body. But what do I mean by the astral body? In spiritual science, we have four. We divide man into four. We divide man into a physical body, which is the external body made up of matter, etheric body, which is the life force. It's what regulates growth and metabolism. And we have astral body, which is the sensations and the source of desire. There's a lot of different definitions of astral body. So what I mean by it is that it's the bearer of pleasure and pain, of instincts and passions, and of our different sensations. And we have the ego, which is the youngest member of the family, which gives us our individuality, our I. And it's what we, in our times, are called upon to develop. We have the mission of developing the ego as humans on Earth. But man is to develop more bodies in the future. You see, right now, we're at the end of material development. We're at the densest point, and the only way forward now is to ascend up into spirit. But there's also the possibility of descending further. Therefore, the astral body is the vehicle by which we either evolve or devolve. Both are possibilities. You see, the desires are the source of suffering, but also the source of our salvation. Therefore, by overcoming desires, we transmute part of the astral body into a higher body called the spirit self. So, we as humans on Earth are already preparing for the next phase of humanity, where we are to develop the spirit self, which is the body whereby we can commune with spiritual beings again. But in our times, we have to nurture this young body, the ego, and use it to progress. Why are we so attached to worldly things? You see, humanity had to lose spiritual sight in the astral world in order to gain a foothold in the material world. We were lost in the material until we gained the ego, which made us lose the spiritual. But it's in our power to gain spiritual sight in the astral world again in full consciousness, because we're actually always in tune with the astral world, but only when we're asleep with our astral bodies. You see, when we sleep, the astral body and the ego leave the physical body to go into the astral world of spirit, and as it were, gathers forces from the spiritual and pours it into the physical etheric bodies upon returning, which is why we're rejuvenated after we sleep. During our waking state, our astral body and ego are constantly deteriorating our physical and etheric bodies. But this is necessary because it's how we sense and feel the physical world around us. But somewhere along the way of developing our materiality, we got attached to it. However, this was inevitable because it was the only way we could find ourselves in the material realm. So it went from spiritual descending into matter, and now matter needs to ascend back up into spirit. So we've reached the end of this development of materiality, and now we need to lift back up to being conscious of spirit. And we can only accomplish this with the treasure that we attain through materiality, through earth, which is the ego. Why the techniques don't work. That's why a lot of these methods that practice non-attachment to the ego don't work, because we need our egos to inform the rest of the system. The real problem lies in us not having mastery over our ego, which means that our passions and desires are what control us. But if you had no more desire, you'd have nothing to use as friction in order to develop your higher body. So you need the lower passions and desires, but you need to transform them. So the question becomes, how do I master the ego? Right now, our desire is in the astral body. Interest lies in the ego and enjoyment in the etheric body. See, back when the ego wasn't developed, we had our interest in the astral body and our desire was in our etheric body. Back then, we lived in the astral plane or spiritual realm, but didn't desire anything that would harm us since desire was in the etheric body. Because our etheric body is only concerned with growth and metabolism, it only desired what was good for it. And it prompted the interest in the astral body, which sees things in images. Now that desire is in our astral body, you'll realize when you desire something, you see it in a sort of image in your brain before you actually have the drive to go get it, right? That's because your astral body sees in images. So after this desire arises, your ego is prompted to obtain it, and it seeks it in the physical world. When we took on the ego, we drew interest into the egoic self, bringing everything into its own realm. But in this way, it cut itself off from the divine. The result was death, because everything that happens only for the individual and not the whole, what is called egoism, ultimately results to the destruction of the individual, to death. So if we're able to raise our interest back into the astral plane, then we're able to slowly shift everything back. But how do we do this? What's the spiritual practice and teaching that shows us how to transcend death? See, because if we can transcend death, then we can transcend the ego. Because the ego is basically death. Individuality brought death upon humans. Otherwise, we would have been eternal in spirit on the astral plane. The one spiritual leader that shows us how to transcend death is Christ. Christ taught that we can transcend death when he rose from the dead. And since the ego is what causes death, he shows us how to transcend the ego. Egoism is what makes up our world of desires, right? And only in deep humility can we overcome this egoism. So by offering your ego up to the Christ, we can transcend our I by the saying, not I, but Christ in me. You find the Christ in yourself and redeem your lower passions and desires. That's it for this video. If you found this video helpful, I'm coming out with another video that will go over just how we can use the Christ impulse to transcend the ego. And I'll link that once it's done. Thank you for watching, and until next time.